Welcome everyone. This is horizontal shift 15.2. So we're horizontal shifting our parent function. So we're looking at this new equation here compared to our parent function f of x equals x squared. So you notice the only difference between these two is we have this minus h in there, right? So minus h. So we're just adding that one thing. H stands for horizontal, and that's what we're going to see. Okay, so let's see how we're going to shift this. Right? So when our h value is positive, the graph will shift to the right. If the h value is negative, it will shift to the left. If it's 0, then there's no horizontal shift. It does nothing. It stays in the middle, as usual. Okay, so let's see our graph. So we compare this function to our a parentheses x minus h squared. Okay, and so you notice we have that a, just like the last section, we had an a in the front. So there's no number in the front here, so this is a 1. So that's how we got a is equal to 1 as our a value. And then we compared our h values, we can see that it compares to 3. And at first glance, it might think, oh, h is negative 3, but it's not. It's positive 3 because it's in the form x minus whatever h is. So h is a 3, so positive 3. Because if we put in a negative 3, it would be x minus negative 3, which will make it x plus 3, which we don't want, right? So we want the x minus 3. So the 3 has to be positive to stay in this form. Okay. Now the way to look at it is if it looks negative, it's positive. If it looks positive, it's negative. So it looks negative, it's going to be positive, right? So your h is 3 for that. So that's how when we graph this, so we have positive a like last time. So positive a is no reflection across the x-axis. If absolute value of a equal to 1, right, it's positive version of a, there's no vertical stretch or compress, does nothing, because you multiply by 1, it's just itself. Your horizontal shift is 3, so horizontal shift right 3 units, right, positive 3. So we can see our graph, as compared to our parent function, it just shifted right 3. Everything is shifted right 3. Here, this one shifted left 2. So that's why this h is going to be negative 2, right? So we'll compare it to our function again. A parentheses x minus h squared. So a value again in the front is a 1 because there's no number, so it's a 1. Our h value, notice there are different signs, right? So in order to make this minus or subtraction, so you have x minus, and this has to be a negative 2 in order for it to be a plus 2, x plus 2, right? 2 negatives. So it has to be negative 2. So that's why our h value is negative 2. Same format. So now we're going to shift left 2 units. So that's why positive a, no reflection across the x-axis. Absolute value of a is still positive 1, so it does nothing. And then h is negative 2, so shift left 2 units. And we shifted left 2 units. Okay. Let's put on to our examples. So number 1 here. So again, we compare it to our function. So f of x equals a parentheses x minus h squared. So let's see, our a value in the front is 1. Okay, so we can see that part. So a is 1. Our h value, if we compare h, right, they're both subtraction, so h is whatever it is. So h is positive 1, right? So if it looks negative, it's positive. If it looks positive, it's negative. So this is positive 1. Another way to remember it is whatever's in here is going to be opposite. Right, so opposite. And then we also have another thing on the outside was this plus k, they call it, which we're going to do next time. But the k for all these problems today is going to be 0. So k equals 0. And we need that for our vertex. So all of these will have a k equals 0 because there's nothing out here for these problems. Okay, so first one. So we have a positive a. And remember, positive a is no reflection. Right? So it does not reflect across the x-axis. Does not reflect. If it's negative, would be reflect across the x-axis, but since it's positive, it does not reflect. Then we take absolute value of a. Remember, absolute value is distance. So distance is always positive, right? So it's just a positive version of 1, which is still positive 1. And you multiply everything by 1, it does nothing. It's just itself, right? So this is no vertical stretch or compress. Our last line is, so this one we did last time, right? Positive a does not reflect. Absolute value of a will give you vertical stretch or compress. This is nothing. And then our next line, which we're adding, is our h, right? So our h value is 1. So we're going to have a horizontal, right? Because h is horizontal, right? So h is horizontal. So horizontal shift, and a positive 1 is to the right. So right 1 unit. 1 unit. Okay, so we're just adding that one line there. H, horizontal shift, right 1 unit. Okay, your vertex is going to be given by always HK, H comma K, HK. So for ours, we have H is 1. So H is 1, our K is 0. So 1, 0 is our vertex. And when we graph this, we want to start at the vertex. When we're graphing, right? So start at the vertex, and again, our Y value is going to be our maximum or minimum value. Let's see what happens. So it does not reflect, so it's going to be facing up. So we should have a minimum point, right? So minimum. And then when we graph it, we can see that also. Yeah. So we're going to start at the vertex. This one is 1, 0. So we start at 1, 0 as our vertex. And we need to do our 149, or I love chocolate, to find the other points. So we do 1, 2, 3. Then our 149, right? I love chocolate. So I love chocolate, and we're always going to multiply that by our A value. So our A value is 1. So we're going to multiply on 149 by 1, which we get itself, right? 149. So it didn't change. It just itself, 149. And that's why it didn't vertical stretch or compress, but it's multiplied by 1 and get it itself. Right? So we go right 1, up 1 from our vertex. Right 1, up 1. Make a point. Next one, right 2, up 4. So next line, up 4. Make a point. Then 3, 9. So next line, up 9. But that'll be way up here, so we don't have to draw it. Up there. And then we have a axis symmetry right through the middle of our vertex. So this is at 1. Because our vertex is at 1, 0. And then we mirror it to the other side, right? So 1 away from the middle, 1 away on the other side. So 2 away from the middle, 2 away on the other side. Right there. So now we can draw our parabola, our U-shaped graph, right through our points. There. Okay, as best as possible. So we can see that everything just shifted right 1, right? Didn't change our shape. It didn't reflect over to the bottom. So now we have a minimum value. Our lowest value is a minimum. So all we did was horizontal shift right 1 unit. Okay, so look at number 2. So 2, same thing. We compare it to our function. So f of x equals a parentheses x minus h squared, and we have that plus k at the end, but these are going to be 0. And then we can see our a value is 2. So a value is 2. Our h value is just positive 3 in here. If it looks positive, it's negative, right? We're taking the opposite. So it's going to be negative 3. We're taking opposite of that number. And our k value is 0. for all of these problems today. So we have our A, H, and K. So we can start filling in our information. So we have a positive A again, right? Positive 2. So it does not reflect. Across the x-axis. Then we take our absolute value of A, which is a positive version of 2, which is still 2. So this is 2. So you multiply every number by 2, it doubles, right? It grows. It gets larger. So we call it vertical stretch because it's getting larger by a factor, and that number was 2, right? So factor of 2, because we're multiplying all our numbers by 2, so it's going to get larger or vertically stretch by 2. If it was less than 1, it gets smaller, so we call it vertical compress. Then our next one is our h, so h equals -3. So we have h is horizontal, right? Horizontal shift, and then negative is left, so left 3 units. Our vertex is our HK, as usual. So H value was -3. Our K value is 0. And then our maximum or minimum is going to be at that Y, which is 0. And it does not reflect, so it's still going to have a minimum. So we have those. Then we want to find our points. Right? So we use 1, 2, 3. I love chocolate, 149. And then we're going to multiply by our A value. Right now, 149 by our A, which is 2 this time. So we're going to multiply all these values by 2. So we get 2, 8, 18. So it doubled all our values. So since it's doubling, it got larger, right? So that's why I call it vertical stretch by a factor of 2, because we multiplied everything by 2. It got larger by 2, a factor of 2. So we start at our vertex, -3, 0 this time. So -3, 0 right there. And then we use our I love chocolate, right? Right 1, up 2. So right 1, up 2, make a point. Next one, right 2, up 8. So next line, go up 8. And then we can estimate it, 5, 6, 7, 8, right around there. And then 18 is way too far, so we don't have to do that. Now we have a axis of symmetry right through the middle of our vertex again. Mirror point to the other side, 1, 1. To the other side. Our top one is 1, 2 away from the middle, so 1, 2 away on the other side. Right there. Then we can draw our parabola. Right there. Okay, so we have a nice parabola going through our points. So you can see it got larger, right, because it multiplied by 2, so vertically stretched, skinnier. And then it did not reflect down, so we have a minimum value, and then we just shifted left 3 units, horizontal shift left 3 units. Okay, so that's how we got that one. Okay, number 3, last one. All right, so we have f of x equals our function again, a parentheses x minus h parentheses squared. We have that plus k on the outside. It's 0 again. And then what's our value of a now? So if you have a negative, there's no number, it's a 1. Right, so 1. So our a value is -1. Our h value, right, it looks positive, so it's a negative, right? The opposite of this one, which is -2. So it's taking the opposite. -2, and our k value is still 0 out there. And we fill in our information. So we have a negative a now, right? So negative a here. So if it's a negative, it's going to reflect. So reflect across the x-axis. Next, we're taking absolute value of A. Absolute value is a positive version of our -1, which is +1. So +1. So we multiply everything by 1, we get back itself. So it doesn't grow or shrink. All right, so no vertical stretch / compress. So no vertical stretch or compress. Our next one, horizontal, right, which is -2. So horizontal shift. Negative is left, so left 2 units. And a reminder, we want to keep our information on separate lines, right? So this is one piece of information, reflect or does not reflect. This one is vertical stretch or compress or nothing. And this one is your horizontal shift. Next time we're going to add another line here. So each line has one piece of information on it. And keep those separated. So we get HK as our vertex. So our H, -2. Our K value is 0. And the Y value of that is your maximum or minimum. This one reflected over, so it's going to be facing down, so it has a maximum. So it should be a maximum. So we're going to find our points. Again, right? So 1, 2, 3. I love chocolate. 149. And we're going to multiply by our A value. Our A value is -1. So multiply all our 149 by A, which is -1. So we get -1, -4, -9. Okay, then we started our vertex -2, 0. So -2, 0. And then we see, since we multiply by -1, right, a negative, it flipped all our numbers to negative. So that's why it's going to flip down and face down. So we have right 1, down 1, but it's negative. Right 1, down 1, right there. Then our next line, right 2, down 4. The next line, down 4. There. -9 will be way down here. You estimate it. Right around there. And then we have a vertical or axis symmetry right through the middle. Then we can mirror our points to the other side. So here's 1 away, 1 on this side. This one's 2 away, 2 on this side. This one's 3 away, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right about there. So now we have a U-shaped graph, which is a parabola. Graph that. There. So it looks like that. Right. So it reflected across the x-axis, and that's facing down. It has a highest point, so that's our maximum. Our vertex is -2, 0. It does no vertical stretch or compress because we multiplied by a 1, absolute value 1. H equals -2, so horizontal shift left 2 units. Right there. Okay, this is this one. Next time we're going to add one more line of information. Good luck.